Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have a great show for you tonight. Dr. Philip Levesque, our past co-host, is back as a guest this evening, and we'll be taking your calls in a little bit, along with Mr. Tim Pate, who's standing by with Jonathan Eder, ready to play music as you see some lovely scenes from our THCF medicinal gardens. We have a hip news segment for you, some film clips, so stand by as we bring out our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
Okay, our first story tonight comes from Santa Monica, California. Detectable levels of the cannabinoid CBD, or cannabidiol, are declining, according to a review of over 5,000 marijuana samples seized by law enforcement in California. The review appears on the website of the journal Drug and Alcohol Dependence. Investigators at the RAND Corporation in Santa Monica assessed changes in the median THC and CBD levels of cannabis samples seized in California between the years 1996 and 2008. Researchers reported that the median THC levels rose during this time period, while median CBD levels fell. According to the authors of the report, they said, quote, median THC potency is increased from 4.5% THC in 1996 to 11.75% in 2008. The increase in THC was far more dramatic in non-border areas, from 4.18% in 1996 to 13.95% in 2008. Then in border areas, where the increase was from 4.5% to 6.8% from 96 to 98. We see the opposite trend for CBD. The median levels of CBD dropped from 0.24% in 96 to 0.08% in 2008, end quote. The authors of the paper speculated that the falling potency of CBD in seized samples was because growers are making greater use of the plant strains that favor THC production over CBD production, end quote. Cannabidiol is a non-psychotropic cannabinoid that is believed to temper the psychoactive effects of THC. In preclinical trials, the compounds demonstrated the ability to both treat symptoms and modify the course of various diseases. A recent review published in the journal Trends in Pharmacological Sciences reported that CBD possesses over a dozen separate therapeutic properties, including anti-cancer properties, anti-diabetic properties, anti-epileptic properties, and antibacterial properties. In recent years, a select number of growers have begun breeding CBD-rich strains of cannabis, defined as 4% CBD or higher, specifically for medical marijuana and its market. Information on these strains, their CBD content, and their availability to the public is available online at the website projectcbd.com. That's www.projectcbd.com. Full text of this study, Heterogeneity in the Composition of Marijuana Seized in California, will appear in the journal Drug and Alcohol Dependence. Our next story tonight is from Montana, Helena, Montana, the capital. Members of the Montana House of Representatives voted 63 to 37 Thursday in favor of House Bill 161, which seeks to repeal the state's 6-year-old medical cannabis law. The measure now goes to the Montana State Senate. Montana's medical marijuana law was approved at the ballot initiative in 2004. 62% of the voters decided in favor of the Montana medical marijuana law. Opponents of the law have claimed that it is associated with rising rates of teen drug use and traffic fatalities. However, state statistics do not support either claim. Montana is one of 15 states recognizing the physician-supervised use of cannabis. To date, no legislature has repealed such a law. In 2010, Montana's Governor Brian Sweetser, a Democrat, voiced his support for the state's medical marijuana law. Our next story tonight is from Sacramento, California. The performance of drug-sniffing dogs is significantly influenced by whether or not their handlers believe illicit substances are present, according to a study published in the January issue of the journal Animal Cognition. Investigators at the University of California at Davis assessed the accuracy of 18 drug and/or explosive detection dog handler teams in a 4-room church. No drugs or target scents were present in any of the rooms, but the handlers were falsely told that contraband was present in 2 of the rooms, each marked by a piece of red construction paper. The authors reported 225 incorrect responses overall, but found that dogs were more likely to provide false alerts when the rooms where their handlers believed that illicit substances were present. The authors and the investigators said, quote, handlers' belief that scent was present potentiated handler identification of detection dog alerts. This confirms that handler beliefs affect outcomes of scent detection dog deployments, end quote. The study's authors speculated that the high rate of false alerts is because the dogs respond to subtle visual cues from their handlers. The authors wrote, quote, dogs are exceptionally keen at interpreting subtle clues, so handlers need to be cognizant of that to optimize the overall team performance, end quote, co-author Anita Oberer stated in a press release. In 2005, the United States Supreme Court ruled in Illinois versus Caballos that an alert from a police dog during a traffic stop provides a constitutional basis for law enforcement to search the interior of a vehicle. So that's our last story tonight. And the full text of this study, Handler Beliefs Affect Scent Detection Dog Outcomes, is available online at springerlink.com. That's Springer, SPRINGERLINK.com. That's the end of our hemp news segment tonight. Now we're going to go over to Mr. Tim Pate and Jonathan Eder. How are you gentlemen tonight?
I am fine. You are?
Great.
You know, I think those dogs just wanted to please their masters.
Uh-huh.
I really do. I think they just wanted to say, hey, is this what you want? Is this what you want? Hey.
Yeah.
You know, I do. I mean, they're really smart, and I know that that training exercises work with dogs. They do. But sometimes the dog is also reading your mind. You know, they know what you want. They know what you want.
Woof.
Yeah, I think something like that.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
You're welcome.
A little jazz for your Friday evening.
Okay, well, we are taking your phone calls tonight. If you have a question or comment for us, give us a call at 503-288-4448. That's 503-288-4448. We'll be taking calls right up to the top of the hour. We have a caller who's been standing by. Welcome to our show, caller.
Hello.
Howdy.
First of all, I want to say I enjoy your show. I watch it often.
Thank you.
And I tried reaching you last week with a question, and your phones were busy. So here
it
I
can
am
be hard
today.
to get through. You were smart. You started early.
That's right. Well, I saw it was on, and I figured I'd catch up where I left off. I am a grower for a patient friend, and last week you mentioned that you were getting, now that sort of early spring is starting to show, you mentioned that you were getting ready for putting things outdoor in April.
Yeah.
And my question to you is, what strains have you had luck with, as I have found summers outdoors here to be touch and go, good years, and then kind of sad, moldy falls, and wondering what advice you would have for other growers, for patients in this
You know, what I found is if you build some posts or a hoop over the garden so that if rain does come, you can cover the plants with a plastic covering. That way you're keeping the direct rain off of the plants. Also, I've had good luck with plants that are Trainwreck strain and the Lemon Pledge strain in particular didn't show mold, even when other things were completely moldy. So it all depends on the particular strain. And then the best thing to do is to cover it when there's rain anytime from September through the middle of October, and they're about ready to harvest, and the weather's changing in the middle of October. That's kind of the ideal time at this latitude.
Would you also find that indica strains perhaps are a little more favorable?
You know, indica strains, I think they're a little bit more dense and tend to be more prone to mold, is what I found.
Oh.
So strains that, my Lemon Pledge strain is a sativa hybrid, and it didn't have any mold at all last year, even though I had some heavy indica strains that were very moldy.
Are there resources for patients to get a hold of those if they particularly would favor?
You know, in our current environment, it's very difficult. I make as many as I can and give them away for free, but you know, there's a limit on how much you can do that. I know there are some places out there that are starting to offer cuttings directly to patients, but I'm not sure if I can direct you to those here on the air.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for your help.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
If you have a call, well, I want to welcome Dr. Philip Levesque.
Glad to be
Welcome,
here.
Doctor. Welcome back. You were my co-host here from like 1998 through about 2006. Was it four?
4, 5, or 6, something
I think
like
it was
that.
more like 6 there. For
But
about,
for all of you cannabis habitués and sons of habitués, greetings to you.
So you've been writing a column for Salem News and
Yes,
doing a regular.
I have a website, salemnews.com. I've got 165 articles and 27 videos, and most of them are about cannabis. What do you think about? What do you think about that?
I think that's quite interesting. I'm very interested in that. Let's talk a little bit about your background. You know, you have a PhD in pharmacology and toxicology.
That's correct.
From right
yes.
here in Portland, what's now OHSU, but back then,
University
in
of
the 50s,
Oregon.
it was the University of Oregon.
Medical school, yeah.
And so you also were a soldier in General Patton's Army in World War II.
I am a survivor of General Patton's Army.
And
yes.
the Battle of the Bulge, they threw you up there toward that, or was it right after that?
Right after that, but my best day, I captured 26 German officers. And crossing the Rhine was my worst day. We lost 150 men in less than an hour, and I ended up behind the German lines.
I see.
And I
It's
escaped.
been pretty scary.
And I escaped.
Well, I know you were a scout in the infantry, one of the most dangerous positions in the infantry.
I was a battalion scout. I was a point man and a forward observer, and I'm still alive.
There you go.
Yay!
Right. I think the average life expectancy was like 48 hours.
Point man. You still are. A point man all the way.
Most of the time for those jobs, about 30 minutes was time limit.
So
Time
you
limit.
were the first to duck.
I'm not afraid to duck in the mud.
Yeah.
And I got plenty of muddy.
I'm sure you did.
And so you crossed the Rhine under fire, and then you met up with the Russians halfway through Germany. Isn't that right?
My next door outfit did, but another one of my worst days, I was captured by a Russian patrol.
That was after the
That was after the
day.
war. That was after the war was over, and that was the closest I came to getting killed during the war. And
that was after the war.
That was after the war, and I told my girlfriend about that I was captured by a Russian patrol, and she says, "Oh no, you weren't." And I said, "Yes, I was, right here at this corner right here." What they want? They wanted to take me to the command post over here. Mm-hmm. And she says, "I believe you now." I said, "Well, why do you believe me now?" She says, "The command post is not over there. It's over there." What does that mean? I says, "Well," she told me, she says, "last week we found an American soldier over there half beaten to death, and they took all of his clothes." Mm-hmm. This was Thanksgiving time.
I see.
Muy cold.
I bet.
Yeah.
Well, those Russians are used to that.
Wow.
I sure as hell wasn't.
I bet. We have a caller. Welcome to our show, caller.
Hello, Paul. My name's Rob. I've been on your show a couple times, but I heard some talk about everybody starting to plan for kind of an outdoor thing, and I think a lot of them are probably thinking about going in their backyards, but just as a word of caution and advice, there are 3 words in the law that say "in public view."
Yes.
I had a neighbor look through a knothole in the fence between our yards, saw my plants, told the cops that I was harvesting pounds every night. The reality was I hadn't harvested anything at all. But anyway, long story short on it, they kicked in my door, and it turned into a nightmare for me. But so
was this last year?
I'm sorry?
Was this last year?
No, this was actually 2006.
Okay. And was that in Multnomah County?
Yeah, it was in Multnomah County. It was on the news and everything. It was a pretty big deal, actually.
But you're right about the in public view. You're absolutely
How many
right.
plants did you have, if you don't mind me asking?
I had a total of 24 plants total.
That is not so coincidentally the number that I've grown outdoors. I put a 12-foot fence 10 feet in from the property line, though. And so, and I actually, last year, the police didn't come, but the previous 3 years, they came and asked to inspect the harvest. And I let them do that twice, and once I was very busy and told them so and that I didn't have time. So they went away and didn't come back that year. But you know, you can go to Google Earth and type in the address and see the plants, you know, from the view last year, probably in August or September, it says right there. But Google Earth will show you these big bushes out there.
You know, I wouldn't put it
Is
past
that
the
public
Portland-
view? I don't know.
I wouldn't put it past the Portland police to use that as a public view.
Well, I have allowed them to come in and count the plants, and because I had, I was a caregiver for a number of patients, that was a garden for about 30 patients, and there were only 24 plants. And so, but they were big, and there was a big surplus, even though there was less than 1 plant per patient.
Oh, wow, yeah. Okay, well, I just thought I'd throw that out there. Everybody be real careful with doing that thing in your backyard or whatever. Just get extra cover for it.
It cost me about $4,000 to build a 12-foot high fence all the way around it. So
yeah, it cost me more than that just from my lawyer, and then it didn't work out the way I thought it was going to work out. And so, yeah, it turned out to be a big nightmare.
I'm sorry you had to go through that. That's very unfortunate. What happened in the end? Did they throw the charges out? And
no, my lawyer told me that she called me up on Friday.
Were you the grower for 4 patients? Was that a 4-patient garden?
Yes, it was a 4-patient garden. And it was Ann Whitty. I probably shouldn't say her name, but she was my attorney. But she called me on Friday, told me that she wasn't going to ask me to take a plea bargain. And then Monday morning I walked in there and she said, Rob, you have to take a plea bargain for distribution. And I said, well, without consideration, I'll do that, but not for consideration. And see, part of the thing was when they came to the house, my name wasn't on the warrant or any of the grow cards. I just happened to be the one that was there. And the other people that lived there weren't home at the time. So they ended up not getting charged. And so I just took it so nobody else would end up getting charged. They told me if I didn't just take the fall on this, that everybody in the house was going to have to come up with lawyers, and we all would be facing 2 years in prison and all this stuff. And so I just took the plea bargain. Well, it turned out that it was a Class B felony for consideration, in spite of the fact that I told her 3 times, please write without consideration on there while we were sitting there. She didn't. But, I mean, it's a whole long story. But,
Sure.
yeah, just the most important thing is not making it to that point in the first place. You know, just,
that's true.
If you're going to do a few in the backyard, make sure you got stuff completely around it, and don't talk to anybody about it. Anybody. Yeah. You know, so
Good advice.
that's just been my experience.
Good advice.
All right. Well, thanks for your call and sharing your experience with our audience.
All right. You guys have a great night.
All right, you too.
Yeah, and despite the fact that there may be a 12-foot fence, doesn't guarantee that somebody might try and climb over that fence or kick their
I've had
soccer
people
ball
climb
over.
over it.
Yeah,
I've got them on
exactly.
video and,
exactly. It's just
pictures, more than one.
Yes.
Multiple
Yeah.
people.
They all want to come in and join the party or take something away when they go.
If you have a question for any of us this evening about ending adult marijuana prohibition, restoring industrial hemp, or helping medical marijuana patients, call us at 503-288-4448. We'll be taking your calls for about another 35, 40
This goes for our audience also, if they have any questions.
That's right. There's a microphone here if anyone has a question. We have a studio audience, so if you want to come down and join us, you're welcome on Friday night here at Portland Community Media at 2766 Northeast MLK, or Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. That's 2766 Northeast MLK at the corner of Graham, like the cracker, Graham. We have another caller. Welcome to our show, caller.
Hi. Yeah.
Howdy.
I was wondering if there are any beneficial for depression, smoking cannabis.
There is. There's a lot of evidence that cannabis helps with depression and manic depression and bipolar conditions. However, only in the state of California can a doctor authorize cannabis for depression at this time.
Let me answer that.
Oh, go right ahead.
I have taken care of approximately 1,000 battle veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder, which the VA says is depression. And those people told me that for immediate battle terrors and post-traumatic stress disorder, marijuana is better than any of the antidepressant drugs that there are. And in fact, the matter is the antidepressant drugs have caused a very bad spike of suicides and murder by the people taking the drugs. So marijuana is the way to go for depression and post-traumatic stress disorder.
What about rage?
Oh, it's definitely good for that.
Well, we have people with Alzheimer's. We have people with Alzheimer's rage.
Shouldn't make light of it.
And in fact, the matter is the state marijuana office won't even tell us how many people there are, but marijuana is good for Alzheimer's rage, and if it's good for Alzheimer's rage, it's good for any other kind of rage too. So,
good point.
I think the word is makes people mellow.
Yes.
Would that be right?
Happy too.
Happy to.
Relaxed.
Yes.
Relaxed. Yeah. Hope that answers your question.
Yes,
I mean, the Israeli army uses it as well for the recovery of their people who have gone through that.
Who have PTSD.
Yep.
There's a lot of evidence that it's useful for anxiety, depression, and obviously a number of psychological conditions.
Yeah, many psychological conditions, absolutely.
However, in Oregon, you can only get it for Alzheimer's-induced rage is the only thing that becomes close to that. There's a list of conditions that are legal in most states. In California, though, doctors can write it for anything they think a patient might benefit for. Their law passed in '96. All subsequent laws have listed conditions for which it can be recommended.
All right, great.
There you
Thank
go.
you.
Right. Thanks for your call.
It's a good question.
Yeah. If you have a question for us tonight, you can call us at 503-288-4448.
Now, we've just recently picked up a station in Montana, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. We're
And-
on in Missoula, Montana,
In
and Seattle, and Denver. We're the #1 rated show or voted show on Denver's cable access system for about 4 years now. And Detroit, Boston,
How many
and about
people-
a dozen
How
smaller
many
cities.
people in Colorado have permits?
About 170,000 people now in Colorado have
Yeah.
permits for medical
And they got theirs
marijuana.
years after we did, but
Oh,
man, they
I
picked
know
up
that,
steam.
yeah,
They moved
yeah.
ahead.
Yep, that's true. When I first opened our first office in Colorado in 2005, there were 700 patients on the rolls,
Right.
and we increased that by 15% in the first couple of days. And it's really starting in 2008. It just skyrocketed all over, but particularly in Colorado.
Now,
Well-
you serve Montana as well.
That's right. We have.
What do you think
offices
is going to happen in Montana? The legislature's gone kind of wacky there.
Well, you know, there's a process. If the legislature passes something, and we used it here in Oregon back in 1997, it's called a referendum. And you go and you sign, before the law goes into effect, you put in notice that you're going to gather signatures for a referendum to stop it from going into effect. And
okay.
what we did in 97 is we needed about 60,000 signatures. We turned in 90,000 signatures. And the legislature, like in Montana, had approved recriminalizing marijuana by an overwhelming percentage, by 70% here in Oregon in 97. But the electorate voted against recriminalizing marijuana, ballot measure 57 in 1998, by 68% against it. Recriminalization of marijuana was defeated in every single county in the state of Oregon. And there's not been a peep.
Every county?
Every single county in the
Wow.
state of Oregon with 68% of the vote statewide.
so Montana has that same recourse if, if the people in
They
the
can,
legislature
seek
good.
a referendum
Good. Remember,
on the,
listen,
mission.
Montana, because there are people in your legislature right now playing with your laws.
That's true. That's true. And there's been some questionable activities by some businesses there. I won't outline them, but I've had direct interactions with them, and that's fired up the conservative right there. And the Republicans have an overwhelming majority in Montana now that the governor is no longer a Democrat. The legislature is, I think, 75% Republican.
Well, that doesn't give them the right to go against the people, though.
No,
They can
no.
deal with that. I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Doctor.
Your story about your going into Colorado kind of reminds me of the story that somebody in the Oregon Medical Marijuana office was called up by whoever runs it in Colorado and saying, "We've only got 700 people. How come you've got 5,000?" So I guess this is really a big switch.
Yes,
It is. Well, you know, we're up to about 50,000.
I
here
know
in
you
the
are.
State of Oregon.
I just
About,
wrote that in an article just a couple weeks ago
They're
in
on
Salem
Dash
News.
News. Salem-news.com.
Yeah.
That's the website.
Yeah, and the people, they've been on our show, too, the people who put out the Salem News.
Yeah. Bonnie King
Yes.
and Tim King are
Yes.
the proprietors who've been working with Dr.
they
Levesque
run
for
my-
what, about 4 years now?
They
or four years?
they run our website. Yeah.
Very good.
Great.
Yeah.
They're also professional media reporters in their
That's
background
right.
as well.
That's right. Yeah.
We have another caller. Welcome to our show, caller.
Hi, I've got a couple of questions. It's good to see Dr. Levesque. He was the one that signed my first application.
Mine too.
You know, we first started seeing patients right here in this studio about 2001.
Yeah.
And it just snowballed from there.
It was at Paul's house.
Yeah, well, even before at my house, we started seeing patients here at the studio, and then it just became too overwhelming for our TV show, and I decided I better move it out of there, and so I did do it at my house there.
Several houses.
Two houses
Yeah.
before we opened our first real office.
That's when I first met Dr. Levesque. But anyway, I have a question.
Okay.
I have 5 acres of land, and on that land I have a shop and I have a barn. I have allowed my grower to use the shop. I have another grower friend who would like to use the barn. These two buildings are connected, but definitely you can tell they are a separate use. and they have the same address. Because it's 5 acres, would that be legal? Or?
Yes, that's legal. As many patients as want to grow cooperatively on one piece of property that want to do that, it's legal. You could have 2, 3. You know, what I do in my garden is I have the patients as their own grower. And so I have about 30 patients that cooperatively share one residential yard. And I grow 24 big plants and supplies those 30 patients. So you can have as many growers associate as desired.
So I could rent out chunks of like an acre apiece to different people to grow on?
Sure. Yes, you can.
Oh.
That'd be completely legal. There've been neighborhood cooperatives where neighbors have torn down their fences and built a fence around like 5 or 6 houses on the same block, where they jointly care for all the people's yard. You know, from September, the early September through harvest time at the middle or end of October, you have to guard that stuff diligently, and if you don't, it's going to be stolen. And so,
how on earth would you meet these people?
Well, that's a good question. You know, I'm not sure exactly. There are a number of businesses out there that have opened up here in the Portland area, but
you're talking about a serious level of trust there.
Yeah, yeah,
you really are.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right. Well, thanks again, Dr. Levesque.
Yay.
Appreciate your program.
Glad to help you.
We're glad to have him back here tonight.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. We have a little film clip we're going to roll, and we'll be back in just a second to take more phone calls, comments, and questions. Stay tuned.
The book also takes us on a journey of the bizarre, the curious origin of marijuana prohibition. Only in the 20th century did the ancient hemp plant become a frightening new drug. The Mexican slang word, marijuana, was unknown to most Americans until it began appearing in newspaper headlines early in the century. Marijuana horror stories, works of pure fiction, were staples of the sensationalistic newspapers owned by William Randolph Hearst. But even respectable papers printed outrageous tales. Although this story would be relegated to the tabloids today, it was fit to print in the distinguished New York Times on July 6, 1927. A Mexican woman and her 4 children are driven insane by marijuana, the New York Times reported. It went on to say that neighbors rushed to the house to find the entire family insane.
It is convinced that he is hopelessly and incurably insane, a condition caused by the drug marijuana to which he was addicted. It is recommended, Your Honor, that the defendant be placed in an institution for the criminally insane for the rest of his natural life.
The next tragedy may be that of your daughter, or your son, or yours, or yours, or yours.
When driving down the road and the sheriff smells your load, you better make it through the woods if you can.
Although alcohol prohibition required a constitutional amendment, marijuana prohibition was brought about by a single federal law, the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. The driving force behind this law was Harry J. Anslinger, America's first drug czar.
You better make it through the woods if you can. If you can.
Anslinger was the government's expert witness during 1937 congressional hearings on the proposed Marijuana Tax Act. As proof of marijuana's malevolence, Anslinger introduced into evidence the bogus Hearst newspaper headlines that trumpeted the violence, insanity, and death allegedly caused by marijuana.
In 1937, when the Marijuana Tax Act was established, there were no data of any sort, much less scientific, about whether this compound was harmful or not. There was just evidence it was being used by people whom we distrusted and feared, and that it was associated with lower class people.
You go back and read the record in Congress, it's amazing the lack of information. There were literally questions by members of Congress saying, what is this marijuana? Is it a narcotic or what is it? And there would be a sentence, someone would stand up and say, oh, it's the most dangerous new drug coming down the pipe.
In terms of what Congress knew in 1937, they didn't know any of that history. The only history that they were given was all these cock and bull stories about how it made people crazy and they went out and killed people under the influence of marijuana.
The Tax Act was built on lies, and I think it's outrageous that we have legislation that still exists today it was based on lies.
Despite opposition by the American Medical Association, Congress passed the law unanimously after debating for a grand total of 90 seconds. President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed it into law on August 3, 1937. Theoretically, the new law did not actually prohibit marijuana and hemp. Only a constitutional amendment could do that. But by imposing prohibitive taxes and mountains of red tape, it made cultivation, processing, sales, and any use of the hemp plant whatsoever virtually impossible. Technically, farmers could still legally grow a hemp plant like this one, but only if they could somehow grow it without the leaves and flowers. This law is still in effect today. The full reasons behind marijuana prohibition are still being debated. Some experts think racism played a part.
So that when poor people, immigrants, take the drugs, we're afraid they're going to rise up, smite, steal, and take the white women. And so we outlaw the drugs because of our fears over that.
Others think Harry Anslinger was motivated by ambition and power.
You know, Harry Anslinger's wife was the niece of Andrew Mellon, the head of Standard Oil and the Secretary of Treasury for 3 different presidents. And they definitely had an economic incentive to prohibit cannabis, to stop the petrochemical takeover. But we have a phone call. Welcome to our show, caller.
Hey, Paul. How's it going?
Pretty well. How are you?
Good. I had a question. I know other states have labs that test for cannabinoids, and I was wondering if Oregon has anything like that, or if it's in the works.
There are a few businesses, at least 2 or 3, that are beginning to prepare to offer lab analysis of cannabis here in the state of Oregon. They aren't open yet, to my knowledge, but when they are, hopefully we'll have some of them here on our show as guests.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you. There are a number of businesses in Colorado, Montana, California is where they first opened up. The first big one was Steep Hill, 2 words, Steep Hill, and they helped train some other facilities as well. We have a couple of we're on the internet, streaming live all around the world, and occasionally get phone calls from all around the world. We have a couple of questions from the internet. One is a question for Dr. Levesque.
There you go.
How does the endocannabinoid system work in the body, and how does cannabis affect that system? Now, Dr. Levesque here holds a PhD in pharmacology and toxicology and taught those classes at how many different medical schools?
About 10 or 11.
And what were some of those?
Georgetown University, Ohio State University, University of Oregon Medical School, South Dakota, Pittsburgh, Puerto Rico.
All over.
I was invited by the University of London to train the first doctors in Tanzania.
All right.
And I was there for 2 years.
Very good.
You were in Uganda, too, for a little period.
Yeah, same time.
Back when Idi Amin was the dictator.
Idi Amin used to come into town, or his men would come into town with 50 caliber machine guns and spray the sides of the road.
Wow. So the question for you, doctor, is it's about the endocannabinoid system. How does it work in the body? And how does cannabis affect that system? Of course, this is new science since they didn't discover the endocannabinoid system until about 15 years ago.
Okay. The endocannabinoid, which is actually, it's based upon the oil that's in peanuts, arachidonal acid is the fatty acid in peanuts, and it is on the cell walls of every cell in the body. Now, in addition to that, there's CB1s, which is in the brain, and CB2s, which are elsewhere in the body. And I don't think it's quite clear whether marijuana THC releases the endocannabinoids or whether the THC functions on its own, because the structures are not quite exactly the same. But at any rate, it works in every system in the body that I know of, and it's also every animal species that's been tested contains the endocannabinoids. Every animal tested so far, including earthworms. So I think earthworms probably lead a pretty happy life,
It's kind
too.
of what I've heard. It's a modulator, an anti-inflammatory
That's true.
Regulator that modulates the other
That's true.
neurochemicals in
Well,
the brain and the
just like I
nervous
say,
system.
it works like a hormone.
Right.
And THC from plants acts as a surrogate hormone, you might say, for the endocannabinoids in the body.
Did that help? I guess you're not on the phone there, but I hope that helped answer your
Are you more
question.
confused than I am?
Maybe so. Maybe so. We have another question from online. It is, how long have the panel members been smoking marijuana? Well, I can say
Let's see, what
that,
time is it?
how long ago or how long, I haven't smoked any in a few days. I vaporized, though, and I have vaporized a little bit today. I started vaporizing
about 5 years ago.
No, it was more than that. It was
Wasn't it?
about 8 years ago
About 8
now.
years ago.
And I found it was very beneficial for my lungs, and I had a bad cough from smoking for about 30 years, and I've been vaporizing about 8 years now. So I'm
Much better.
going on 40 years, and I don't have any cough or wheeze or anything at all. So I am approaching, I'm well over 35 years of inhaling cannabis myself, so I can answer that.
Pretty dangerous
You
stuff,
don't,
isn't it?
I know. You can see I'm ready to keel right over. Look, my hair's turning white. Yours is gone. You don't smoke marijuana, though,
No,
right?
I don't use marijuana.
Right.
Actually, I accidentally got some marijuana cookies on 2 occasions, and one time I must have had a terrible load of some homemade cookies, and I hallucinated all night, and I
didn't want to do that again.
And I had dry heaves, and I felt bad.
I have seen my significant other, my wife, also have eaten something that was too much, and she was very nauseous. It didn't affect me that way, but you know, different strokes for different folks. We have a, and you, Tim, how long have you been using cannabis?
I was sitting here thinking while you guys were talking, and you know, I want to out myself. Okay, let's see here. My first time I ever got high, I was in high school, so Nathan Hill High School, Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's where it all started.
So we're talking,
and that was 1972.
Okay, so in about another year, it'll be 40 years.
Okay, now let me caveat this a little bit. I didn't smoke while I did through college. But after college, and when I went back to grad school, I didn't, and I was a minister for many years, and I didn't during that period of time. So,
I see.
But then after I was no longer a minister, my little sister got me high, and I realized it was truly my medicine, and that was 20 years ago now.
Well, I can honestly say
for the last 20 years I've been smoking.
I first smoked marijuana at a babysitter's when I was 11, and I bought my first pound when I was 13.
There you go.
Pounds back then were just $110.
I was going to say that wasn't a lot of money.
So prohibition wasn't working too well, and that was in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
By the way, the person
and how many C's were in
who
that pound,
provided
too?
me
That
with
was one
marijuana,
person.
well, that's about half of it.
But
that was in Dallas, Texas, and at the time, the people who I had gotten cannabis from that were over 18 would have been put in jail longer. There wasn't a death penalty there in the 70s till the Supreme Court reinstituted it, but they would have been put in jail longer for giving me marijuana than if they killed me.
Yes.
So in the early and mid 70s.
Yes.
I had 2 patients that had been smoking marijuana for 55 years.
Wow.
Yes.
So you first saw cannabis medicine while you were here in Portland at OHSU, or the University of Oregon Medical School, as it was called.
It was made totally illegal in 1937, and in 1950, when I started at the medical school, my boss told me to straighten up the stock room, and the first thing I found was a gallon of cannabis cough medicine.
You know the company that...
Park Davis.
Park Davis.
Park Davis. And I poured myself a pint of it, and it's still at my house in my barn or something like that.
Well, we got to dig that one out.
Yeah, I want to see that one myself.
That's not going to be. I want that bottle. It's another issue. You know, we're going to take a phone call, then come back with our sharing, our show and tell segment here in just a moment. Welcome to our show, caller.
I just was wondering about growing with kids in the house.
Oh, you don't want to allow kids access at all. You want to make sure if you have kids in the house, you don't use marijuana in their presence. You don't. You keep it under lock and key, and it's best to grow at another location. If the children come in, though, it could be called child endangerment. So you have to be very careful of that.
Okay, so just basically keeping it locked up and out of their...
Exactly, where they have no access or access to the keys to get into the garden or into your stash.
Treat it like a loaded gun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lock it up.
This is an extremely serious problem because there have been a lot of people have their children taken away from them because they were growing marijuana in their homes.
We have our little show and tell segment. I have a number of antique cannabis products here, some of them full, some of them not. Here is a cannabis indica, powdered cannabis indica. On the back of it, it says 1 ounce. This was powdered hashish from the Merrill Company in Cincinnati. And it says poison up here at the top. A lot of these medicines say that. Some people believed it was a poison, but this was 1 ounce of powdered hashish or keef, and it was both Park Davis and Eli Lilly had some products like that. Now here we have cannabis tincture number 17. It's physiologically tested, and it's from Park Davis, and there's a little PD embossed on the bottom of the bottle there. Next door we have a cork that's kind of broke off and residue in this bottle. You can see it says it is poison right there. And this is cannabis fluid extract number 96 from Eli Lilly. So where this one is tincture number 17, this is fluid extract number 96. And I can't really tell you right off the top of my head what the differences between those are. This one is one of the rarest things that I've run across. It's from the Allaire Woodward Company of Peoria, Illinois, and it is still full. It is a package of cannabis, and I don't know exactly what's in there. I'm not going to try to open it, but it's about 90 years old. It says the properties are a nervine, it'll cure your nerves, anodyne, knock you out, sudorific, and an antispasmodic and anti-epileptic. So a lot of the things that we are currently allowed to use medical marijuana for, they were using it for back then in 1910. On the bottom, the common names are foreign Indian hemp, hashish, halish, gallow grass, bong, gunja, churus, and one other, hanf from the German. So this is a pretty rare package here. And this is a package from the San Francisco Cannabis Buyers Club back in the 1990s. This was the way they packaged up. Looks like this was 5 grams. Very bright, colored package. It says, warning, may cause drowsiness, dry mouth, mild euphoria, and short-term memory loss. Do not drive or operate heavy machinery. It's printed by the Purple Tree Trading Company. And the price was $60 for an eighth back in the 90s. And it's grade California Green 5A. Next to that, we have a full bottle, very rare thing, from the Adamson Drug Company of Clarenburg, West Virginia. It is your improved cough and cold compound, a valuable expectorant and sedative for coughs, colds, and simple ailments of the throat, chest, and lungs. The compound is valuable and in the treatments of coughs, colds, simple bronchitis, and spasmodic croup. It also says an unusually effective cough and cold preparation and contains a specially selected remedial ingredients of rare quality. So There it is. And this is something I've been holding on to for a number of years, and some chocolate preparations that were quite popular back about 6 or 7 years ago, before the feds came in and shut them down. This is a Dragon Bar. It's chocolate almond dates with medicinal cannabis. This one is called Uno Dos, and it's a medicinal chocolate caramel bar. I would say I probably would have a weakness for chocolate and caramel,
Yeah,
but
I know.
you know, I'm probably carrying a good number of pounds of chocolate caramel.
You blame it on the chocolate, are you?
This one, I love the name of this. This is Hashi's Bar. It's medicinal chocolate almond bar. Very good. This was next over. We have a deodorant purchased at a local health food store. It's hemp oil deodorant. It's made with the seeds of the marijuana plant. Some people like to distinguish the THC content, but it is from cannabis. And then last but not least, another one of my old products from back when I sold hemp paper from 1990 through 1997, tree-free eco paper. This is 50% hemp and 50% straw. And I imported about 60 tons of this in 3 containers back in 1991. So there you have it, hemp paper. It's also mixed with cereal straw. So that's the end of our sharing segment for tonight.
How many bottles would you say you have in your collection
About
now?
200.
I'd
About 200
like
things,
to
bottles.
I
And
talked about the one that has the physiological test.
Sure, sure.
The physiological test developed by Eli Lilly Company and Park Davis. Number one, they would inject it into the dog, which was their test animal.
I see.
And an effective dose was when the dog staggered.
Yeah, yeah.
And like a human staggers when they're drunk.
Sure.
And if they fell down, that was too much.
That was too much. That makes sense to me. This says that it is tincture number 17. It contains 93% alcohol, and it is an antispasmodic, analgesic, and hypnotic from Eli Lilly Company of Indianapolis, Indiana. And this one, fluid extract number 96, is 80%. So this would probably have more cannabinoids in it than the other one. It is a tincture of cannabis from Eli Lilly with 9 fluid ounces of cannabis and 1 fluid ounce of fluid extract of cannabis. And says here that it's physiologically standardized according to the USP antispasmodic, sedative, and narcotic. It's an emetic, which means it cures nausea, right? No? What is emetic?
Antiemetic. Antiemetic.
So this would, it says emetic to remove as much as possible. Strychnine as a respiratory stimulant. So this also includes some strychnine in emetics as a respiratory sedative. Not something I would think would be.
Well, it was used by so many drops.
Yeah. So it wasn't really a big dose.
Yep.
Okay, we have another caller. Welcome to our show, caller.
Oh, okay. Are you talking to me?
I'm talking to you.
All right.
Are you talking to me?
Hey.
Hey. No, I'm just kidding.
My brother died of terminal cancer some years back. He wanted marijuana. I'm wondering if 1/12 of a plant always would take care of a person over the last month of his life. Yeah, apparently that's the legal limit, more or less.
Now say that one more time. Would how much?
Well, if you get one plant, is there a legal limit of one plant that you people can grow one plant?
Well, you know, or in 2005, the amount allowed was increased to 24 plants and 24 ounces. Now you can only have 6 of those plants that are taller or wider than 1 foot. So you can harvest a plant, leave it hanging, but you can't take more than 24 ounces of it off at one time as usable medicine per patient.
I'm not talking about, okay, you said per patient.
Yeah.
You're saying 24 per year per patient?
Well, it's not per year, it's at one time. You could use more than 24 ounces in a year, and as long as you didn't have more than 24 ounces of usable marijuana at a time. Typically, when police come in and seize marijuana, if the plant's all on one bush, hasn't been trimmed, it's generally counted as a plant, not by its dry weight, because it's not usable. Especially when I have a big 10-foot tall bush all wrapped up in, it's not usable as a big 10-foot tall bush. So I just take, and that 10-foot tall bush might have 7 or 10 pounds on it. I just take 1.5 pounds off, and at a time.
10 pounds and a 10-foot. Okay, now I get some kind of picture of what's going on. Well,
Yeah.
That's the information I was after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen up to 15 pounds harvested off a single plant.
So in your opinion, the laws are loose enough in that regard to take
Well,
care
you know,
of
it depends. If you're cultivating a single-person garden inside with a small light, 6 plants might not be enough to sustain a garden for larger plants. It makes it more difficult. There's not as much room for error, but it certainly can work. You know, I'm able to supply 50 patients with 24 plants, and still have excess to give to cancer patients such as your brother.
All right.
In fact, if there are any cancer patients out there that need help finding medical marijuana, you can call us at that toll-free number there.
I'm Peter, the prophet Sagittarius, and I preach and teach and prophesy, and so I'm just out getting the information for that purpose.
You're welcome. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, Doctor, we're wrapping up here. I want to thank you for coming on again. We got to have you back more often. Is there anything you'd like to say to our audience here in closing?
Well, yes. I've told this to most of my patients. I had about 5,000 patients. Tell them, don't smoke in the rain. And every once in a while, somebody would ask me, why not? And they had been smoking the good stuff.
I guess so. It kind of puts it out there. Hey, well, if you're out there and you need help finding a doctor who can help you with medical marijuana, call us at that toll-free number, 800-723-0188. I want to thank you for watching. Tune in next week and help us restore hemp. We're going to go out on the music. Tim Payton, Jonathan Eden. Thank you, gentlemen.
See you next week, folks.